Vivaldi, and it's taken from a story of an African American. He's an editorialist for the New York Times. Brent Staples, large African American guy, and when he was showed up for graduate school in Chicago years ago, and walks down the street dressed like students, and he realizes that he's making whites uncomfortable, and they're avoiding eye contact and sometimes even crossing the street to stay out of his way. And he realizes from their behavior that they're seeing him stereotypically. They're thinking of him as a possibly menacing African-American male on the south side of Chicago, and they're apprehensive and they're moving away from him. So he's being seen through the lens of that stereotype. There's a huge social impact there on him, and it's depressing to him. And he writes about this in his autobiography. He eventually learns a little simple tactic, which is that as he walks down the street, if he whistles Beatles tunes and whistles Vivaldi, then he's seen completely differently. He's just seen as a black graduate student at the University of Chicago, and not as a potentially menacing guy. So with that behavior, it punctures the stereotype. It makes the people in his environment not use that stereotype in viewing him. The idea of stereotype threat is the very simple idea that if you're trying to perform in an area where your group is negatively stereotyped, you're going to feel an extra pressure, a distracting kind of pressure. And that pressure can affect how well you perform. If you don't know about it and you don't know how to deal with it, it can have this kind of effect, and that is a source of this underperformance. Started with an attempt to understand a phenomenon called underperformance, which is that groups whose intellectual abilities, are negatively stereotyped tend to perform worse in subsequent schooling, like high school kids going to college, tend to perform worse than their test scores predict, or than other kids with the same test scores. So you've got sort of roughly the same preparation, but you've got this group whose abilities are negatively stereotyped in the larger society: women in math, minority students, African American students. That's the group we looked at first. We found we could very quickly, easily produce underperformance in the laboratory. For example, if you bring women into the laboratory, women and men who are really good at math and equally good, and you give them a really difficult math test at the frontier of their skills, the women, even though they're just as prepared, don't do as well as the men. So that's underperformance. That's exactly what it is. Two groups equally prepared, but one group, because of this stereotype issue, not performing as well. So eventually, thinking back, probably a year and a half, 2 years, we came up with the idea, well, maybe the stereotype is pressuring this underperformance. And if we could take the stereotype out of that situation, if that's what's causing it, if we could do something that would take the stereotype out of there, then women's performance should go up to match that of equally skilled men. And so eventually we came up with a very simple way of getting the stereotype out of there, which was just before they sat down to take the test, the men and the women, alone in a room, just before they took the test. We told them, look, you may have heard that women don't do as well on standardized math tests as men. You may have heard that, but that's not true for this particular test. On this particular test, women always do as well as men. So with that little instruction, we changed the whole meaning of the situation for women. Now, as they experience frustration on that test, and they would normally worry, are they confirming the stereotype? Are they going to be seen to confirm the stereotype? They don't have that worry, because this particular test is a test for which women always do as well as men. There's no pressure. They could worry that they're not going to perform as well, they don't have as much math ability as they thought they did, but they can't worry that that's true because of something about there being a woman. That little anxiety is removed, and when you do that, women perform as well as men. And that was a huge relief and discovery at the same time. I mean, that the stereotypes in society could have that kind of effect on something that we think of as as very difficult to modify performance on a serious standardized test. We did this research with the graduate record exam. These were very talented participants in this research, really strong math students. And to find that the stereotype was depressing women's performance that much, a full standard deviation, something like 15 points on a test of 100 points. That was really a dramatic sort of in the face. This is something big. It wasn't something small. It was something big. We're all members of groups, have identities that are negatively stereotyped. There's not a single identity that doesn't have a negative stereotype about it. And whenever you're in a situation where that negative stereotype is relevant to you, and you care about the situation, you care about doing well, you could experience this stereotype threat. Being older, being young, being gay, being conservative, being liberal, having cancer, anything. People will, as you go down that list of identities, you recognize that in some circumstances you could feel like you're going to be seen negatively because you've got that identity and that stereotype threat. So in a school situation where groups have very elaborated stereotypes, they're often under this kind of pressure of worrying that they're going to be seen in terms of that, reacting to that, trying to push that off. Well, if stereotype threat and identity threat are the problem in a situation, then what you need to focus on is building a sense of identity safety in the classroom or in the workplace. And that's a sense where a person can trust that they're not going to be exposed to negative experiences based on having an identity. There have to be some effort put into building that kind of assurance in the people who are in the setting. And we have to recognize that that's a little something extra. It seems extra, but we really have to do that in order for everybody to feel identity safe in the situation, safe enough to function and flourish in the situation without this threat, without this pressure. As much as we can, we have to attend to these things. They really do make a difference. We have to, in classrooms, a part of allowing students from these groups a sense of safety in the classroom involves representing the classroom, the cues in it, as valuing identities and as seeing them as positive and as valuing the diversity that people bring to an enterprise like schooling.